Good afternoon, everybody. It's getting close. This is my favorite panel every year, and I am selfishly so glad that I get to host it. This is what I learned from retail and how it helped me to kick ass. Joining me today is Andrew Cady from UMortgage. He is a branch manager there. We have Carrie Gusmus, the president and CEO of Aslan Home Lending. And we have Jonathon, Haddad, the president of Next Door Lending. Thank you guys so much. So let's get right into it. Andrew, how long were you in retail?
My entire career. I joined in 2015 and left December of last year. So just over 8 years in retail and now coming up to 1 year in the broker side.
Awesome. And Carrie, how about you?
I started in bank and retail in 2001, and I was with quite a few of the large retail lenders before founding Aslan Home Lending in 2019.
The timing of that, we talked about that,
yes.
was pretty incredible. We're going to come back to that and talk a little bit more about it. How about you, John?
2013, I was 21 years old and was in it for 7 years.
Amazing. So, when you were in retail, Andrew, what were your impressions of wholesale?
Well, I worked for several big retailers, or a couple big retailers, and I actually helped create this campaign called FUD, Fear, Unrest, and Doubt, about the broker channel to help retain our originators. So I like to tell people I didn't just drink the Kool-Aid, I helped create the Kool-Aid. So yeah, my opinion was, what I'd been taught is that you lose control of your transaction, that you can't close on time, you can't speak to an underwriter, you really have no control, and obviously now I'm on the other side of it and see the error of my way, okay?
Well, it's funny because I remember when we talked a couple weeks ago, you said, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop when I got into the broker channel, and I don't think it's dropped yet.
No, so when I got to the broker side, I just made the jump, and I was like, the first 6 months of being on the side of the business, I kind of waited every day for that oh shit moment, like this is the fatal flaw of the broker side. I finally found it. And I waited and waited and waited, and I haven't found it. And it's been kind of refreshing to not find the fatal flaw, because God knows there's plenty of them where I came from.
Well, I'm just glad that you're able to really serve your customers, and we're also going to talk a little bit more about that and specific to a certain program. Carrie, how about you? What were your impressions? And I really want to hear your story, because you have a really unique and interesting story about your impressions of wholesale and the journey that you went to that led you here.
Absolutely. So I was in retail for 18 years in bank, and my impression of wholesale was very much as what Andrew just shared, that you didn't have any control, that your loans went into an abyss, that the people in the wholesale channel were practically criminal. And I actually lost a couple of people. I'm like love, nurture, compassion, growth. I am all those things to the people that joined my organization. But I had a couple of people who left me to go to the wholesale channel. And so I realized that I had to try to create FUD. Never heard that. I needed to create some FUD. And so I began to research the wholesale channel in 2019, and within 2 months, I did a lot of research. And within 2 months, rather than determining a way that I could persuade people not to leave retail, instead I became convinced that the wholesale channel was actually the best way to serve not only the loan officer, but our clients and our communities as well. I ended up not only getting some friends and starting Aslan. I wrote a whole entire class called Broker Demystified. I submitted it to the state of Colorado for continuing education credit for real estate agents. And I actually began to teach about why the wholesale industry and the wholesale channel was the best channel for referral partners, clients, and communities. And that's how I got into the wholesale business.
You researched yourself right out of retail and into wholesale.
I did. I drank my own Kool-Aid on the wholesale channel. I could no longer sell the retail story.
Indisputable facts.
Yes.
I love Jonathon's story. Hey, where were you before you came
I
over
was
to
at the
wholesale?
#2 lender in the country. Yeah.
By any chance, do they have anything to do with outer space? Or?
There might be something that potentially can take you into outer space.
I
Yes.
thought so. So
I won't mention the name.
would love to hear your impressions of
So
wholesale.
I'll tell you, please don't hate me in this room. Please understand I was 22 years old the first time I ever got an LE from a mortgage broker. I got the loan estimate, and I was like, holy, for lack of better terms. And I was like, man, there's no way they're doing this. It's a locked LE. I went to my team leader at the time, and please, again, don't hate me. I went to him and I said, hey, so-and-so, how are they doing? He said, let's look them up. Oh, it's a mortgage broker. John, just so you know, this is what mortgage brokers do. They send out these loan estimates like this, but if you actually look them up, you can see they don't do a lot of volume. And when the loan gets closer to closing, they bait and switch clients. It's a super common thing for mortgage brokers. So I went out and told my client that, unfortunately, not knowing I was lying to my consumer at the time, and then surely found out that we were selling 400 or 500 bips on the back end and realized that I was robbing consumers blind. So that is how I started to adjust later down the road as I learned more about the business and margins, how things are actually structured. Yep. And then from there, I started to make my own inclination and opened up shop now. I've been about 4.5 years.
Awesome. Now, I'm going to ask you all what made you decide to join the wholesale channel, and you have a very specific story about the wholesale channel and why you decided to come.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of reasons why. When it comes down to it, I worked for, at one point, a really good company in the retail space, one of the better companies out there, and I didn't have bad management. I didn't have these type of issues. I didn't have issues closing loans in 10 days. It was good, but my margins were so far out of whack. I could no longer compete at the level I needed to compete with, and one of my things that really just, it was a year and a half before I left. But it's something that I never stopped thinking about, was when my father called me, who's a veteran, Vietnam days, and wanted to utilize his VA loan to purchase a home. And I sent him to a broker to get it done because the broker was going to be about 1.75% better in rate than I was going to be, with as tight of a file as I could get on it. And it just never seemed right to me. If I can't serve my own father, what am I actually putting out there for other veterans? Am I actually doing them a service by getting them into homeownership, or am I actually doing harm? And it's something that just never sat right with me. And when some other things began to fall apart, that story just stuck in the front of my mind, and I knew it was time to pull the trigger.
Amazing. Now, Carrie, I imagine that your research is probably one of the main driving factors, but for you, was there a tipping point? What was the thing that made you say, okay, I'm actually going to do it now?
So there were a couple of things that caused me to say, I'm going to create a company in the wholesale arena. I did the research. I had these ladies who said, how can I deliver a higher rate than what's fair and available while taking lower compensation? That's what really started me on the path of doing the research. But I've also, I believe very highly in professional coaching. When Peyton Manning was playing for the Broncos, I'd say, if Peyton Manning needs a quarterback coach, you need a coach. If the best voices, the best athletes, the best performers, all are coached, we should all be coached. We are definitely not at their level, at least I am not. So I had several coaches, depending on what we were working on, and they both said, within about the same period of time, you're gonna continue to run into a different ideology than the one that you have. We are extremely servant-oriented. We really believe in taking care of people. We believe that we do contribute in our communities, that it matters. What we do matters every day, and it's not about the dollar. I love what I've heard from this stage when it says, don't worry about the money. Do what you love and the money will follow. Whistle while you work. There's so many books that have been written forever. And so starting a wholesale company, I didn't have a choice. I could not stay in retail with a clean conscience and continue to lie to people and try to recruit them, much less retain my own people. But then starting my own company was because I needed to know that our culture and our philosophy was always gonna follow that heart-led path versus the calculator.
There's such a theme about our consciences, our desire to do what's right, the fact that we sort of want to sleep at night when we go home, and it feels like all of you kind of reached that inflection point. How about you, Jonathon? Was there a specific thing, or was it just all this
It was everything. I mean, I ended up, I had a 1-year non-compete, so I moved to California and got my real estate license out there, just learn. I wanted to learn the business, and then I wanted to work for people that do like, $50, $100 million transactions. Worked with a guy that facilitated actually the Walgreens at the Venetian. He facilitated that entire deal. And so I got to learn a lot from him, and as that 1 year was up, I started itching. I got that itch back, and I was like, I'm ready to just seek and destroy, because that's who I am. I'm a worker, I'm an early guy, I'm a late worker. Yep. And so once that 1 year was up, that entrepreneur spirit kicked in, and I was just ready to take over and not work in that direct-to-consumer model. I wanted to really build the purchase side of the business, especially connecting with these guys at such a high level. I was like, there's got to be a way for me to facilitate and bring this all together and talk that talk and work with the biggest agents, in my state. Yep. And that's what I've been fortunate to do over the last couple of years.
Well, I think obviously you had some foresight, and I'm sure you're very glad that you started with a purchase-focused business.
Now, yes. Looking back, I was very dialed into purchase even during the COVID times, and I was like, you know what? I did refi for 7 years. I led some amazing teams that I had. We did billions of dollars in business, but I was like, I like relationships. I don't want the transactional, piece of it. I want to actually build relationships with people that I enjoy and do it the right way. And so that's been very, very fortunate, to have that ability to do that.
What I really am so pleased about with all of you here is you've all thrived through every challenge that has happened. And a lot of our speakers this week have been people who, in our Women's Summit, I talked about find someone who's thriving and ask them how they're winning. But then if you're thriving, find someone who's struggling and lend them a helping hand. These are folks that know how to win and thrive in any market. And so I would encourage anybody that's struggling, because let's be real, the majority of us are. Ask the people who are winning. Jonathon went and he purposely worked with top producing real estate agents during the time that he stepped out of the mortgage side of the space. Look around at what the people who are thriving are doing. So, of course, you all made the big leap. Andrew, what was the transition like for you going from a very institutional retail environment into a pretty large brokerage?
Yeah, so for me, the transition's been extremely smooth. All the fear, unrest, and doubt I created it was so funny, because it's just, none of it's true, but I digress. This whole concept of you've got to learn guidelines for all these new lenders. The reality is any loan I could have done at the Green Giant, I could send to 6 or 7 different lenders. There's not specific overlays that I have to sit back. There's no guidelines I had to learn. I know how to do mortgages. Sure, if I wanted to get in and do a 500 credit score loan that I couldn't do at my previous company, I've got to dive into some guideline stuff. But the process was really smooth. I moved a team over. Not my whole team, because that was unfortunately the way it exited. But yeah, it's been extremely smooth. And I think the most beautiful thing that I've found about being on the wholesale side is it's so easy right now to build the wholesale channel. Yep. If we're struggling with selling 7.5 interest rates, understand that your retail counterparts are selling 8.25 with a 1.5. If you can't recruit from retail right now, talk to me, because you should be able to. I've added 24 people to my team in the last 9 months. And it's literally like shooting fish in a barrel with a bazooka right now, just going and getting them. It's very easy.
Well, they're making less money and they're offering higher rates. So it becomes a numbers game. And then once they get here, hopefully they realize all of the other things, the flexibility that we have, which really is what is best for our consumers. There are 6 or 7 options for every scenario, which I think is fantastic. Carrie, again, I want to drill into the timing of you. 2019, you said, I'm going to start my own company. I'm going to leave the retail channel, and I'm also going to become an entrepreneur and endeavor to start something completely new. I want to hear about that transition and the time shortly following 2019 and how that was for you and your company.
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to say that AIME was smaller at the time, but was still definitely available and a resource. When we decided to start a company, there were two ways that we could think about it. And I say we because I went to two other ladies that had been with me for a long time at several retail companies. So our chief credit officer, now she has been with me since 2005 across a multitude of retail companies, and our COO had been with me already in the retail channel for probably 8 years. And I went to those ladies and I told them, transparency, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And we said, well, we could either all get a list, we could get Carrie's list, because I was the producer of the group and had 9,000 people in my database or whatever. We could take that, we'll all start originating, we'll all start calling, and we're just gonna start doing loans. Or we can set up a real company. And so I said, we need to set up a real company. We need to make sure that we know how to market and that we know how to do compliance. I loved when Matt shared earlier, like get a process and then scale. We started out with 9 people and we learned to do things right. And then we began to add states and other things, which has hugely impacted the ability of our team to thrive in this market. But in that market, we did not know in June of 2019 that COVID was going to shut the world down in March of 2020. We weren't saying, let's go 9 months and we can just turn on the faucet. It's going to be fantastic.
Fire hose.
People were gasping a little bit in 2019, if you remember. 2018 was not a profitable year for a lot of channel, retail, bank, wholesale people were struggling as well. So we started utilizing video, though. Our team, we had to expand our space during COVID. The city of Denver was out writing citations if you had too many people in your office, and everybody wanted to be together and wanted to come in and learn and grow. We were recruiting, we were growing. It might have been impacted and dwarfed somewhat by COVID and how many people weren't actually going to work, but we were growing and we were thriving, not just in the ability to add loans because the market went crazy. We all had a freak out for 3 days and then got on the roller coaster and had a great time. But we were just spending time together. We were growing and developing our systems, our processes, making sure that we were working in the right way so that we had a sustainable model, because I have been in the business since 2001, so that we had a sustainable model in the kind of model that we had today. But we did a lot of research, and I feel so great about retail people coming into this business. Whether you're joining a company or you're deciding, we call you single shingles if you're a 0 to 5 kind of person shop, but if you're gonna start your own company, there's so many resources available today that were not available necessarily in 2019. I loved Matt's slide earlier because in 2013, wholesale had dropped to 8% of all originations.
Yep.
And now we're back up to 22. But it was just fantastic timing, and that was just a blessing, really.
Amazing. So Jonathon went out of mortgage into real estate, and you had to make a big transition back and actually start your own shop. What kind of things did you encounter during that process?
So it was two business partners. They brought me on at first, my two partners, Doug and Natter, and then kind of transitioned from there initially. But at first, it was more so just like I couldn't believe that there was products for everybody. Because at my previous place, it's like, that's not a doable loan. Oh, that's not real, right? Oh, overlays. And then I'm a guideline guy. I love reading, going through it. I started reading, I'm like, wait, this is real. You can actually do this. I started reading the handbooks, and that's just who I am. But the biggest thing for me was that learning, but honestly, and maybe this isn't the best thing always, but I was so ready to just prove everybody else wrong. And I was so dialed in and determined that there's just no chance anyone's gonna see me not do well at this. There's a 0% chance. I went all in on just waking up early, staying late, all in on purchase, something I never did before. I was an all refinance person, right? And so for me, that transition was all about, okay, how can I showcase to people that this is actually doable? And because of that, some of the biggest names at the previous company now opened up their own shops and are with UWM directly. They're in the top 10 already as a company. And that started, I truly believe, because of me having conversations with them. They started reaching out to me. How much money are you making, right? I was like, I'll show you my check if you show me yours. And that's what I was doing. Then they'd call me and I'd tell them and they'd say, show me. I'd show them and I said, when you leaving? When you leaving? I was just gun-ho and ready to just take over the world. So my transition was more so about learning, understanding the process, being very dialed in, learning about all the nuances of the broker channel, because there's a couple different things that you have to deal with, and just taking it from there and really trying to build something as special as I can and just never giving up.
I imagine we talked about this, being students of life every day. We talked about you can't teach motivation. We had a great talk earlier. And, I think that when you get out of a box, I've worked on all sides of the business myself as well. When you realize how many options are out there for clients, there's a lot of learning to do too. I mean, just a lot of mortgage IQ that you really have to gain in order to really serve everybody, right?
The biggest, you're spot on. And I think one of the biggest things with that, it's like coming into this channel, like guys, here's the thing, just really quick. By a show of hands here, who here has ever hit snooze on their alarm? Anybody? Okay. We've all done it, right? And who here knows the story of Adam and Eve, right? And the snake and all that. And this isn't going to get religious, so relax, okay? Relax. But the story of Adam and Eve, right? They talk about the apple, okay? And they talk about the snake and that snake telling Eve to eat that apple, okay? So I want you to think about this for a second. For thousands of years, the story has been the same. That snake is that voice in your head that tells you to snooze on your alarm clock. That snake is that voice in your head that tells you not to make that call. That snake is that voice in your head that tells you not to get that referral. That's what that snake is. It's your voice constantly battling with you. And so for me, when I got to this space, I didn't have anybody on my ass all day long. It was about me, and so I don't give up to that voice anymore. I beat that voice every single day, and I just had twins. They're 3 weeks old. And I swear to you, I woke up, my son was going nuts, and I was so frustrated, and I said, whoa, it's that voice, what are you doing? And I held him, and I was sitting there smiling like a psychopath, just smiling. My girl wakes up, she looks at me, she goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm just so happy to be here right now. I'm so happy to be there because that is so serious that you have to deal with that with the transition because, guys, we don't have all these different structures and people to talk to right all the time that some of these retail shops might have. But the reality is you can depend on yourself and realize that you can beat that voice every single day, and you got to dial into that when you're making these transitions over to the broker channel.
Such a good point.
Nailed it.
So we talked about, some of the benefits of the wholesale side, but certainly there's a reason why so many folks stayed in retail. What is the good? What did you get out of it?
Nothing. I'm not kidding. I mean, looking back, you can find good in anything you do.
Sure.
Like I'm a big believer that there's a silver lining to everything. And it taught me a lot. But, I like to think of my years in retail were years that I was riding a bike with training wheels. It taught me, like the schooling I got of understanding mortgages and complex transactions, because I had massive amounts of transactions. You see a lot of scenarios. But like riding a bike with training wheels, if you do that your whole life, at some point you just look stupid. Like at some point people think you're dumb. Like at some point you have to graduate off the training wheels and go from retail to the wholesale side. And so for me, I look back on my time in retail, I look back favorably. It taught me what I know. And I would say the biggest thing that I learned in retail is the difference of a manager versus a leader. And if I could leave this crowd with one thing today is you don't manage people. I had bad managers and I had good leaders. There is no such thing as a good manager. There's no such thing as a bad leader. You have a bad manager or you have a good leader. Really, if you're looking to build a company or build a team, focus on leadership. And I'm still extremely good friends with my previous company branch managers, Derek and Justin. They're phenomenal people. And they taught me everything I know about leading and growing people. And that's the number one thing that I learned that I take away that I still resort back to all the time is because, Derek was always the good guy in the situations. Justin was a little more fiery. And I ask myself the question all the time, is this a Derek moment? Is it a Justin moment? Like, where am I going with this? But you really have to hone in. I mean, I actually went to the point where I petitioned the company I'm at now, UMortgage, to change my title from a branch manager to a branch leader. I don't want to be called a manager. Like you look at my email signature, it no longer says manager, it's leader. Because it's mental game for me. I don't want to fall in the trap of being a manager. I don't manage my people, I lead them. You have to lead by example. You have to be in the trenches. You have to be the one. I put a competition out to my team. We're gonna go to open houses this weekend. Let's see who can hit the most open houses. And oh, by the way, if anyone on the team can do more than me, I'm gonna give you a large cash donation. Nobody beat me.
That's a leader.
You have to lead from the trenches.
Walk
And
the
that's
walk.
what I take out of retail.
Walk the walk. What did you learn from retail?
I learned a lot from retail. Prior to 2001, I was in the financial service industry. I worked for A.G. Edwards. I worked for Shearson Lehman Hutton. I am dating myself by saying the word Hutton or Shearson Lehman. Oh wait, they're all gone. So I was at Northwestern Mutual. So I wore navy blue pinstripe silk suits, like called them IBM Blue, and they had my name sewn inside them. So I was very much a corporate person. So guess who the first company was that I went to work for? Guess what? They have a Stagecoach, Wells Fargo. So I was an executive for one of the largest lenders in the country. We shared a previous employer, and there's a ton of structure. There's a ton of available sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes they say there's your phone. But there is a ton of structure often available in the form of training and education. There's a marketing department. There's somebody, you did not know that there was a call report done if you were in retail. You'd never heard of that before. There was just so much structure that was available. And that's really what retail has done well, is provide that infrastructure. Wholesale originations in 2008 were 69% of all the originations. But the structure was still there if you wanted it, because those originations were predominantly going to the 5 largest banks in the country. We didn't have as many lender choices as we have now. Those wholesale folks had some, but predominantly those big banks. Those big banks still, I believe, offered a lot of structure that was missing as people re-entered the market today. It's why at Aslan, just as UMortgage has done, we've created a hybrid. I like to call it scaffolding, and you get to hang what you want on it. So we've built scaffolding, and you might want to hang tapestries if it's cold outside, and you might want to hang beautiful shears if there's a nice warm breeze blowing. But it's marketing support, it's compliance support, it is technology support, it's training, it's education. I like to say the things that are really necessary for an originator to be successful. Like, we're all digging into this AI now so that we can train our sales force on how the heck to most effectively utilize it. But that was taking the things that I learned from retail that I did feel these were good for people. The other thing that's good about retail that we haven't done as well and we're doing better is belonging. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but the feeling of belonging as a broker, you don't have to not belong to a family or a pride, as we say at Aslan, because our name is Aslan, who's a lion, if you don't know that. You don't have to not belong to a pride if you are an independent broker. So we're really working to embrace the things that were good in the retail channel and bring them and reflect them in the wholesale channel without the lying and the expensive infrastructure and all the negatives.
Well, I'd love to talk about that sense of belonging. For those who don't know, I lost my mom less than a week ago. And the reason that it was so important to me to be here is because for 26 years in this industry, largely, there wasn't a sense of belonging among all of us, particularly before the Great Recession and the crash. And what this community has created together is exactly that. And so unlike another conference, which I probably wouldn't have chosen to attend, in this case, I was walking into a family, a community of people. I could feel the love from the second I walked through the doors. And so I think we've done an intensely amazing job of building belonging, and I hope that we keep building that together.
Agreed.
Oh, thank you. John, you came from a pretty large, pretty organized organization. I'm sure you took some tools and some good things from that.
Yeah, so Andrew's similar to that, where like I had really great mentors. I really did. I got nothing bad to say about them. They taught me a lot. But it's 3 things for me. Like, if I'm going to tell you anything that I would implement right now into your own business, it's 3 things. Number 1, the structure Matt talked about earlier in terms of having a back end is super important. I had a team of literally 12 to 14 people, and we did $1 billion 3 straight years in a row. simply focusing on just straight origination, right? That's one thing that they had that's a really big deal. But number two that I would focus on is scripting. Scripting, don't assume people that you bring on have any idea how to go through like an actual conversation with an agent or anybody. Like we build scripting out like crazy. I've automated it. There's a platform called Cognito Forms. For any of you, it's free. You can build an entire script. So something like if the borrower says they're looking to purchase within 0 to 3 months, you click that button as an LO as they're going through the call, and then it showcases what to say to the client. Like I give that to people that are new to purchase, taking it on, and then they have to submit that form. You click the button at the bottom, hit submit, it comes to me, and then I review it after they get off the phone call. So the scripting piece is big, and then the other piece of it is role plays. My team thinks I'm an absolute psychopath. We do power hours every day except Friday. And the power hour is you have no idea, but no one can be on the phone. I call them and I absolutely roast them. And I give them the craziest objections, and they have one goal. They have to get through the objections at least 3 times before they can hang up the phone. I'm the worst client you'll ever deal with. I'm the worst. Brokers are awful. You're not retail. They tell you you're a liar. You're a liar. You're never going to give me that rate. How do they respond to that? Because I can't have you go, I don't, we're cheaper. Yes, we are. That doesn't work for me. So if you're not practicing it, you're done. We have power hour every day. It's literally from 12 to 1. My team knows not to be on the phone. I go into another room and I call them. I don't do it in person because they're too comfortable with me. They know who I am. I do it behind closed doors and I make a phone call because that's what we're doing. We're on the phones all day long. Those are the 3 things I'm telling you that I've implemented that's truly helped build like the purchase team that we have in our local market. And we're bringing on, I got back into production in March. We're literally, the team I have of 11, we're facilitating 40 to 50 transactions, purchases a month right now in this market. And that has to do with our dedication to the process and them understanding this is what we have to build in order for us to get through these times. So those are the 3 takeaways that I got from retail all day long.
100%. So as we begin to kind of wind this down, what I would love for you each to just really get into. Some of the folks here have never been in retail. They've always been in wholesale. What advice would you give these folks? Is there insight as to what the competition is doing? Are there things that they may not know that you know because of your experience that you would want to share with them today?
That's a tough question. I could go back into the manager thing, but that's really probably the biggest thing that I took out of retail. I would say find some really, really deep confidence in yourself, knowing that you're the good guy. Like this is not an easy market, but this is the market where I think, if the words coming out of our mouth is like Renee said today, this is the most powerful tool we have. And who's supposed to be our biggest champion on earth? You'd say my mom, my dad. No, it's supposed to be us. We're supposed to champion ourselves. We're supposed to be the one that is proud of ourselves for what we do. And if the most powerful tool is our mouth, and we should be our biggest champion of ourselves, watch the words that come out of your mouth about yourself. Oh, I can't do that. You're setting yourself a barrier. You're setting a mental barrier for yourself. I could never do this. I could never do that. I used to say all the time, I'm just not a gym guy. I'm just not a gym guy. And guess what? I wasn't a gym guy until one day I stopped saying it. And then I figured out I could do that. And so I think we have to get ourselves to a position to understand the value that we're bringing, understand the position we're in as the good guys in this, and really don't self-deprecate. Become your biggest champion, become your biggest advocate, because if you won't show up for yourself, how the hell are you gonna expect anybody else to show up for you? Like, how do you expect a team to show up for yourself when you're the one who hits snooze 9 times on your alarm clock? You tell them you gotta make phone calls. Are you making your phone calls? Are you leading by example? Are we going down that road of really believing in ourselves first and pushing that forward? And that may not be something I specifically learned in retail, but it's something I've learned in my career, is you have to put yourself first, and you have to walk the walk. You can't be the person that self-deprecates and then expect others to do things. You have to be the one that champions yourself and guard the words that come out of your mouth, and don't put just simple little self-limiting beliefs out there. As dumb as they may sound, they have a big impact in your life.
The inner voice is the most powerful influence on our behavior. What do the flight attendants tell us the minute we sit down on an airplane? When the oxygen mask comes down,
On yourself first.
put it on yourself first so you can help everybody else.
Agreed.
Carrie, what do you think?
So I was actually really excited about this question, and there are two answers. If you have only ever been in wholesale, like who's only ever been in wholesale? So there's quite a few people. Some of you might be new to wholesale, and some of you might be in it for a long time, and you say, Carrie, I already know this. But the first thing is, we like to say around Aslan, be the expert. It came from a guy that I call Brightside. His name is actually Mike Sadowski. If you ever see him walking around, give him a hard time. But Brightside does our market update videos every Friday, and he says, be the expert. So if you are in wholesale, you need to be the expert. You need to know more. If it's legal, moral, and ethical, and it is available in the United States, you have or could get access to it for your client. That is not true of a bank originator. That is not true of a retail non-bank originator. It is true of you. There's nothing that stops you from signing up and contracting with a lender to get access to something that will benefit your client. So you have to be a higher level professional and a higher level expert than you would in the retail channel. And oh, by the way, nobody here will pay you for doing nothing. So if you're sitting there trying to figure out how to get paid for not doing any business, then you probably should go to the retail or bank channel, because you'll get a draw or a salary or something to do nothing. But that doesn't happen here. This is a business of, in my experience, experts and people on their way to becoming experts in trying to help their clients to a greater ability. But the second thing is AIME and all of the brokers, we are your tribe. We are your pride. Just because you don't have a company that you work for, you have a family, you have an organization. Help each other. We keep hearing it this week. Help each other. Do not eat your wounded and young. Help them. The new people in the business, if you've been around for a few days, get over yourself. They need help because we're all gonna die and they're gonna still be alive. We're gonna age out. Like, help the younger people, help the new people into the business. And we're all brokers. It just drives me nuts when I hear us talk badly about each other. We're only 22% of the market. There's 78% we can still talk smack about. Don't talk shit about one another. This is your family. And we need to treat each other with respect. It doesn't matter what kind of organization you are. It doesn't matter if you're the single shingle. It doesn't matter if you have more loan officers than anybody. It matters that we are all broker, and the bank and the retail world still expects us to implode. Mm-hmm. And the more that we are there for each other, and the more that we understand that we are family and that we support one another, the greater our market share will be faster.
Now is the time to plant seeds. Now is the time to work. No time for infighting anymore.
Agreed.
Listen, from the broker side, look, I'm going to tell you this in the best light possible. Like, one of the things I started doing is these companies have gone public, right, on the retail side. There's a few of them. That means that when they do their earnings report, you can literally see the liquidity that a company has. So the second largest, lender in the country, if you look at the liquidity, the last time I checked, it was about, I think, $8 billion. That's a B, $8 billion. So the one thing that drives me up the wall is when I see people post, brokers are saying like, oh my gosh, they're imploding, this is happening. You do not be naive for a second that they're not sitting there planning and being prepared. I've been in those meetings. I've been very fortunate to get as close to the top as possible in those meetings, and I know how the conversations are. That company bought a company called Truebill, which means that now they can see every single client that signs up with Truebill. They now can see that data. So every time the credit card is swiped, they know what you like. That means they can see if you need a cash out refinance. So please, do not be naive to think that they're sitting there going, oh, we don't know what to do. Yes, they do. They do know what to do. And if you're not planning ahead and listening to the conversations before, right, from Russell, Enrique, Mike, talking about AI, I'm not saying be the expert, but I'm saying learn to understand data and don't be naive to it. Don't sit there and think that they're going to implode and just go away overnight. That's not happening. They are planning for something big. And if you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, you're going to literally be lost in a couple months when you're like, what happened? What happened? Why are they writing all these refis? Don't think they're not capturing the data and are going to unload the second they can save your client a quarter point. I was on those teams. I ran those teams. And we would call day and night. I'd be in at 7 and I would not leave till midnight. And we would sit there and go 50, 60 loans in a day, all refinances. I did it, I'm telling you the truth. So if you're sitting here being naive to it, just know you're going to be stuck in the mud and you're not going to be in first place to set yourself up properly. So don't be naive, set yourself up right, and get with the right people. You don't need to be an expert, but at least have a decent understanding of what's going on in our marketplace.
100%. Well, I would like to thank all three of you for your wisdom and for coming here today to talk with me. Thank you guys so much.